Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm going to do my book review on Hour of Love by Hazel Hayes. Before I go into my book review, I would appreciate if you like what you're seeing to give my video a thumbs up and also hit the subscribe button, as I love the booktube community that I found this past year. So I first want to start with a bit about the author Hazel Hayes. I read a bit about her, and so she's born in Ireland but based in London, which is actually very similar to her protagonist. And I read that this book isn't really about one ex, but kind of about like all the exes that she's experienced through life and she's learned lessons from. So this is actually her first debut novel, and she is traditionally more of a screenwriter and actually does a lot of horror writing. But she said that in the book itself at the end that there is nothing more horrific than love. So to her, this wasn't that too much of a stretch that she would write about a romance novel. And then also before doing this book, she also had a very popular YouTube channel. So it used to be called, I think, Tipsy Talks, but now it's just called after her namesake, which is Hazel Hayes. And she has quite a bit of following. So she has about 240,000 followers or subscribers when I last checked last night. And she basically interviews, at the time, I guess, content creators, but while drinking. So that's why it was called Tipsy Talks. But since then, I think as she got more popular, she has also interviewed people like Jack Black, Rebel Wilson, Daisy Ridley, so a bunch of celebrities as well. So this book was actually recommended by my friend, but I see that's actually quite popular. And then even on the cover itself, there is a review by Matthew Haig or Hogg, who has been a very popular author as well, because he wrote Midnight Library, which people like raved about. I read that book last year and I quite enjoyed it as well. It kind of was a bit predictable, but I don't think the point of the book was to be unpredictable. I think the point was to kind of give yourself some reassurance. So interestingly enough, this book as well kind of gave me reassurance as well. And I think it'll give a lot of people who's going through a tough time or a heartbreak that same reassurance as well. So to get into the book, the story starts with a breakup. And we know that this couple has been together for 5 years. So it starts with a breakup, and then how the book works is it actually starts moving backwards in time. The protagonist is female, and like I mentioned earlier, she is born in Ireland, but in the story, when she's in a relationship, it's mostly based in London. And her partner's name is Theo, and he's British. He's British, or I guess London-based Londoner. So it goes from breakup to introduce the story, and then you're kind of like, oh, like what brought them to this point? And then it kind of goes backwards, covering like their first moments when they met, their first evening together, her moving to London to be with him, and going through like family hardships, as well as like deaths, and also sharing like any family trauma they had while growing up. It's pretty good because for me, I felt like the female protagonist and Theo aren't perfect characters, and a lot of times they project onto each other, and because you kind of see why they are the way they are, you don't really blame them because it makes sense why they act the way they are. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers because I feel the book is worth reading, but I guess this book's really good because neither character is a true villain. They are both just doing their best and sometimes maybe not doing their best intentionally, but you can really see and understand why they came to the actions or conclusions they did. So as I said, the book is set in London mostly. The main character is so they're in their I think early 30s or like late 20s in this book. I was trying to think about the main character's name. I was doing this book review and I realized that I didn't remember her name, so I was actually flipping through the book to try to find her name. But then I realized that by Googling to verify that the author intentionally did not give the protagonist a name. So Theo, her partner, calls her Angel all the time, and her mom calls her Baby, but they never actually reveal her name. And the book is also written in first person's point of view, in the protagonist's point of view. So I think that was intentional. So it kind of puts you in her shoes. For me, I'm in my early 30s, so I felt like this book was really relatable as someone who's gone through long term or like serious breakups. A lot of things I felt like I had the same thoughts as well in my head. But some things were a bit extreme, but I think something for everyone, you know what I mean? So yeah. So as I said earlier, like I really enjoyed this book because there's no villains or antagonists in the book or people who are really mean spirited. The only person who's kind of mean spirited is maybe the partner's mom. So I guess like the mother-in-law, but they're not married, which I thought was kind of funny because I feel like that's such a common trope where like the in-laws are always kind of mean or nefarious towards the new girlfriend. But I'm sure that is a reality because why else would it be a trope? But for my experience, I've never had any of my exes or my current partner's parents be mean to me or malicious. So that was interesting too. That was like the only villain in the book. I really enjoyed. So both characters in the relationship, they had a lot of like family trauma where they had like maybe not so great dads in their life. So I thought that was like interesting because again for me, I don't have a great relationship with my dad, so I really was able to take that from the book, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that as well. One of my favorite things about this book is I really like how it captured all the nuances of relationships, and especially the nuances of sometimes like when I'm in a relationship and things happen and I try to tell my friends what happened, my friends may not understand what I'm trying to explain or going through because they're not in it. So this book captured really well the intimate moments of bliss, but also like conflict that happens that only two people in a relationship can really understand. So Hazel Hayes did a really good job capturing that. Uh, and and then also things I didn't like was, so I said earlier the book starts with the breakup and then it starts moving backwards. But the issue is it's not linear. So what happens is at first it seems kind of linear, but then as you're reading, it kind of time jumps back and forth quite a bit. So it's not very clear. It's not very clear if the relationship like started amazing and start like deteriorating. It seems like there was times when it's really great and really awful. But I think that was very intentional because that's how a relationship is. Like it's not like it always starts off great and then it's awful and they know how to end it. Like in this book, the couple starts really great, has hard times, and then good times, bad times. I'm sure there's like multiple points in between where they could have breakup but decided to work through it. So at first it was kind of frustrating to read because it wasn't like each period of their relationship was distinguished by chapters. It was more like one paragraph would be the protagonist describing some event, and in the next paragraph, it would be a very different point of view, and you're like, oh, what happened? And then you realize it's actually a different point in time of the relationship. So it is a bit frustrating when you're reading it, and you kind of have to get used to it. But I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker for the book. But if you know that going in, you might enjoy it more. I was fortunate that my friend who recommended it to me, she kind of complained about that when she was reading it. So I kind of went in expecting it. So maybe I had a more enjoyable read, but I think if you just read it not knowing that, it could be frustrating. So I'm giving you a disclaimer if you decide to read it so you can enjoy it a bit more. And also, I think it was important that he did that because this novel is in the perspective of the protagonist. And I think with any breakup that you've experienced, you never think about your memories in a linear aspect either. You kind of always think about the good times, and then maybe an hour you think about the bad times, and tomorrow you might think about a good time or a bad time. So I think even though it is frustrating as a reader with the time jump, it is very accurate to someone's experience when they are reminiscing about a relationship. So on Goodreads, the book got an average of 4.01, which I think is pretty high. I feel like anything that's 3.5 and higher is definitely like worth reading. There were a mix of reviews. the most common critique was how the time warping was a bit confusing, and also a lot of people didn't like how, in a way, depressing it was, because we know they don't, because we know the book starts with them breaking up, that they aren't together, right? So the story is depressing, I guess, because it is the end of a relationship. But I remember I read a quote recently, or maybe it was in this book actually. Actually, now that I think about it, actually is from the book, from the best friend, where like a relationship is kind of like a roller coaster. Just because the ride is over doesn't mean it still wasn't fun. And like a roller coaster, relationships have their ups and downs. So I feel like even though some people reacted on Goodreads that it was kind of like depressing and sad to read, I think it's really accurate and realistic of a relationship and life. So I would definitely give this book a 4. It wasn't a 5 for me because um, there were some parts of the characters I thought were kind of like immature, but I tried to empathize because I think when people go through a breakup, they don't always act the most level-headed. Um, but yeah, it wasn't a 5 for me, but definitely like a very strong 4. So reasons why I think you should read this book is, I think if you've ever experienced a tough breakup or the end of a long-term relationship, whether it was amicable or not, um, I just think it's great to read. It's almost like a mini therapy book, because I feel like the protagonist gives you a lot of validation, maybe how you thought or how you have thinked in your breakups. And I think and I really feel if I had this book to read through all my previous breakups. So yeah, I think it's worth reading if you have that experience in your life. If not, it's still a good read. And I think also another reason why you should read this book is because there is a movie adaptation coming out for it. And I think it'll be really fun to have read the book and then watch the movie and then kind of like compare the differences and like what's better, what's not better. Obviously, the book is going to be better, but I think it will be fun to see what the movie will be like and who they will cast. So, in my previous two reviews, I always say one of my favorite things to ask people about a book is not what the book was about, but more like how the book made them feel. Because out of all the books I've read, I won't always remember every plot or every character name or like even the exact setting, but I'll always remember how a book made me feel at the end. So if I had to sum up this book in one word, it made me feel bittersweet. As you can tell by this review so far, like it's bitter because it's the end of a 5-year relationship and they have such entangled lives, but it's sweet because they had a lot of great moments together. And just because something ended doesn't mean that you fail. It just means it's the end of that relationship. So that is my book review for Out of Love. If you can get a copy, I definitely recommend reading it. I had this on hold at my local library, and I was on the wait list for like a month. So yeah, I think it's pretty popular right now. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. So I'll also introduce the next book. I already started reading it last night. It's actually a young adult fiction, which I didn't realize, and I don't remember how it came to my attention, but it's so far I'm like already like really into it. So it's called They Both Die at the End. I'm not going to say too much about it because I'll save it for my review when I finish it. But I do want to say it's kind of similar to All of Love because the book starts with, we know how it's going to end, and then we're working backwards. So it's kind of fun when you kind of know the outcome and then just kind of seeing how we go to that point. So I'll definitely do a review for this. If you want to join, read it. It's called They Both Die at the End by Silvera. And yeah, if you're having any recommendations, I'm always down to read books, especially from different people, because I'm not really like one genre kind of person. I love reading different types of books. So leave a comment below if you have a recommendation. Tell me your thoughts about Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. And yeah, if you're going to read this book, let me know as well. Okay, bye guys.